I was diagnosed with acute leukemia. After going through countless hardships, my family finally found a suitable matching bone marrow for me. However, my girlfriend, Sophia, secretly gave this precious opportunity to her first love. On the day of my supposed surgery, Sophia resolutely left her work, turned off her phone, and stayed by her first love's side without leaving for a moment. As for me, I was alone at home, writhing in pain on the floor, with blood flowing all over the place, and my heart gradually turning ashen. When I was told that my life was in countdown, I calmly blocked her. She then said, he was almost dead. I just went to accompany him. You're different from him. But I was also on the verge of death. Start of the main text. If you like it, remember to subscribe. James, what on earth are you doing? Why did you freeze my credit card? The door was slammed open, and the huge noise echoed in the dim room. Sophia stormed in. Seeing the room was pitch black, she kicked off her high heels and complained, "It's late at night, and you don't even turn on the lights or cook. I don't know what you're up to all day." I looked at this woman I had loved for 5 years with a pale face. 5 years ago, Sophia was a down and out college graduate. Later, with the help of my family, she started a company and became a strong businesswoman. To enable Sophia to work better, I willingly stepped down from the company and only focused on taking good care of her. But this woman, for whom I had given everything, cruelly took away my only chance of survival. At the thought of this, I couldn't help but cough softly. My chest hurt more and more, and the cough became louder. But that woman didn't even offer a word of. She just frowned and said, "If you're sick, go get treated." I stared straight at Sophia and questioned, "Why did you give away the bone marrow that matched me to someone else without permission?" She was stunned, then said somewhat uneasily, "You didn't seem to be in a hurry. My friend has been sick for several years, and the match happened to be successful for him. I thought you had just gotten sick, and you had more time, so I gave it to him. But I didn't have that much time at all. Acute leukemia progresses extremely fast, and this matching was obtained by my family with great difficulty." Sophia pretended to be pitiful and coquettishly said, "Honey, you won't blame me, will you? Your family is so powerful. It's just a match. If we lose it, we can find another one. Don't be angry with me. I promise I'll never do such a thing again. When you're hospitalized, I'll go to the hospital to take care of you every day." As she spoke, Sophia sat down beside me and reached out to put her arm around my shoulder. A faint mint smell wafted in the air, which was the perfume her first love liked. This woman was with her first love just a second ago, and now she was pretending to be affectionate to me. It was really disgusting. Slap! I forcefully slapped Sophia's hand away. She showed a shocked expression, then immediately said impatiently, "What are you doing? Still getting angry over such a trivial matter? Do you know that you stopped my card today, and I almost failed to pay? Do you know how embarrassing I was? You're simply crazy." I didn't know. All I knew was that this stupid and selfish woman had taken away my only way to survive. I looked at her expressionlessly and said, "Sophia, get out of my house." The chattering woman suddenly shut up. She stared at me in disbelief. "What did you say? You want me to leave?" I sneered, "This is my house." Sophia instantly stood up. She was like a lit powder keg, pointing at my nose and shouting, "You mean you want to break up with me? Fine, it's really hard to please a rich second generation. You used to say you loved me all the time, but now you kick me out as soon as you're not happy." Sophia grabbed her coat from the sofa. "James, don't you regret it?" Sophia stormed to the door. Seeing that I was watching indifferently without any intention of stopping her, she stopped in place and shouted loudly, "James, even if you kneel in front of me and beg me next time, I won't want you anymore." I was left alone in the quiet room. Cough, 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 my throat was extremely itchy, and my whole body ached terribly. I started coughing continuously, almost coughing my lungs out. The next second, I felt something warm slowly flowing from my nose. I raised my hand and wiped it, and my hand was full of blood. After getting sick, I often had sudden nosebleeds, and Sophia had seen it several times. At first, she would help me wipe it clean in a slightly flustered manner, but later she would just watch coldly and keep saying, "You're so disgusting. Can't you control it? David is sicker than you, and he doesn't act like this." In Sophia's heart, David was so perfect and handsome. Even when he was sick, he was worthy of sympathy and love. I coughed until my vision was blurred, and tears couldn't help but well up. But the hatred in my heart grew stronger. If it weren't for her, I would have already had the surgery and entered the recovery period. I sat numbly on the sofa for a long time, then took out my phone and dialed my brother Mark's number. I was born into a happy family. My parents had some savings, and Mark had a good, listed company. They loved me, and they once truly liked Sophia, hoping she would treat me well. But in the end, things didn't go as expected. After I got sick, my parents took care of me wholeheartedly, and Mark used all his connections to help me find a matching bone marrow. Eventually, he managed to get it from the son of a big shot in the circle. The other party asked for a large amount of compensation and finally agreed to transplant it to me. But unexpectedly, the call from the hospital confirming the surgery was accidentally answered by Sophia. By the time we found out, David had already had the surgery, and the donor couldn't donate a second time within 3 months. Because of this, my father was so angry that he was hospitalized, my mother cried all day, and my brother held my hand and told me that he would definitely find a way to save me. I was very grateful to have such a family. I really didn't want to leave them. But fate was so ridiculous. I called Mark to apologize and hoped he could take good care of our parents and not be sad for an unfilial son like me. Mark was silent for a long time before saying, "You've always been their pride and also mine." I burst into tears. "Brother, help me sell this house." "Okay," he replied. This house, which carried the 5-year memories of Sophia and me, was finally sold smoothly. In the last days of my life, I didn't return to my relatives. The pain brought by the disease not only tormented me but also my loved ones. I cowardly chose to end it. I mixed the medicine with hot water and swallowed it, then fell into a deep sleep. Gradually, I felt the pain in my body getting lighter. When I opened my eyes again, I was surprised to find that Sophia was standing in front of me. Everything was white. This was the hospital. Her eyes stared straight at me, and I couldn't help but take a step back in disgust. The next second, I was shocked to find that she actually passed through me. I had become a transparent ghost and was forced to follow her. "David, why did you get out of bed?" Sophia rushed towards David behind me. "Your face is so pale. Are you not feeling well?" I turned my head and saw David wearing a hospital gown. His face was extremely pale, but he had carefully sprayed perfume. David said, "I'm fine. It's a bit stuffy in the ward. I want to go out for a walk." Sophia attentively supported him and said, "I'll accompany you." David nodded and then pretended to ask casually, "Sophia, you haven't been back for a week. Won't James be angry?" Sophia said indifferently, "It's okay. He's very generous. He didn't even call me for so long." David was surprised and said, "This means he's angry with you. He must be angry that you've been taking care of me in the hospital." "It's all my fault." David pretended to be pitiful and said, "If it weren't for the fact that I have no parents and can't find anyone to take care of me, and even this illness was cured by you, I'll pay you back the money as soon as possible." Sophia was really infatuated. My brother said that Sophia's company was having trouble with cash flow recently, but she could still take out a large sum of money to have surgery for David. She coaxed David a few words and said she would go back to get some clothes to change and then come back. I watched Sophia drive home. Unfortunately, she didn't know that I had thrown all her things away. Ding, 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 the door lock kept sending out the wrong password prompt. Sophia frowned and complained, "That bastard James actually changed the password." As she was speaking, the door was suddenly pulled open, and a burly man appeared at the door, frowning at Sophia. "What are you doing?" Sophia was startled, then asked angrily, "Who are you?" "Honey, who's been trying to open our door?" A woman in a red nightgown peeked out. The woman immediately blocked the man and looked at Sophia somewhat warily. "Who are you? Why are you keep pressing our door password?" "I've called the security." "Behave yourself." Sophia was stunned and asked, "Your house? But this is clearly my house." The woman said speechlessly, "Are you crazy? I just bought this house a week ago. How could it be your house?" Sophia was puzzled at this moment and thought, "James, he sold the house. How could it be possible? He was just throwing a tantrum." Just then, the security guard rushed over from behind and invited Sophia out. Sophia was still in a daze. She grabbed the security guard's hand in disbelief and asked, "James sold this house?" The security guard nodded, "Yes." James seemed to say he was going back to recover from his illness and suddenly sold the house. "Does he have some serious illness?" Sophia's words suddenly stopped, and her expression became hesitant. I naturally knew what she was thinking. She must be wondering how serious my illness was. Sophia was sent out of the community. I stood behind her and watched her type "acute leukemia" to start searching. The more Sophia searched, the more solemn her expression became. Finally, she was in a panic, and her hands started to shake. At this moment, I actually felt a bit of pleasure in my heart. "This is just the beginning, Sophia. Your good days are yet to come." Sophia started to call me frantically. As soon as the call connected, a cold female voice came from the other end, "This number has been cancelled." Sophia's face turned pale. She looked at her phone in disbelief, then started to call my brother and my parents, but it was always busy. Naturally, after I died, my family must have blocked her. It was 10 o'clock at night. Sophia hesitated for a while and was about to take a taxi to my parents' place when David called her. The man on the phone said pitifully, "Sophia, I didn't mean to disturb you, but I suddenly feel very uncomfortable. I don't know if my body has a rejection reaction." Sophia hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll come to the hospital right away." When she arrived at the hospital, Sophia asked, "Should we call the doctor?" David looked at her with a bit of apology. "I just called the doctor. The doctor said I'm just under too much pressure." "I'm sorry, Sophia. I made you come here for nothing." Sophia was silent for a long time. David obviously also noticed Sophia's abnormality. He asked, "Did James quarrel with you again?" "I'll call him and explain." In the past, as long as David made a call or sent a text message, Sophia would drop everything in her hands and rush to his side. For this, I had quarreled and made a scene with her, and later my heart gradually grew cold. I would look at the sumptuous food in front of me and coldly watch this woman leave without hesitation. Perhaps at that time, my love for Sophia was gradually disappearing. Sophia asked, "David, you've had this disease, so you must know something about it, right?" David was stunned, then nodded uneasily. Of course, he would feel uncomfortable. In the past, Sophia took his feelings into consideration and never mentioned his illness on her own initiative. Now she actually asked on her own. David must be very puzzled. Sophia asked, "Is acute leukemia dangerous?" David was surprised and said, "Does James have acute leukemia? Didn't you say it was just an ordinary leukemia and was detected in the early stage?" Sophia couldn't say a word. She had never cared about these things. David said again, "The hematology department of this hospital is very famous. If James is sick, he is probably in this hospital. Maybe you can find him if you look for him." David just said it casually, but this time, Sophia actually nodded seriously. "You're right. I'll ask. I'm sure I can find him." I watched Sophia ignore David's shouts, leave the ward absent-mindedly, and rush straight to the doctor's office. She stared at the doctor intently. "Please, James is really my boyfriend. I want to know which ward he is in." The beautiful female doctor, Olivia, looked at her strangely, pushed her glasses, and said, "This is not in line with the regulations." Bang! Sophia slammed the table heavily. Her eyes were red, and she was breathing rapidly. "I just want to know how James is doing now. I'm really worried about him. He's my boyfriend. Why can't I know?" Olivia flipped through the medical records, then asked expressionlessly, "Since James is your boyfriend, why don't you know his situation?" Sophia was speechless. Olivia continued, "James and the gentleman you're taking care of were hospitalized on the same day, but there is no record of you visiting him in the past 3 months. Facing Olivia's reproachful words, Sophia had no way to refute. Olivia then replied, "James's physical condition is very poor. Acute leukemia progresses extremely fast, and he could be in life-threatening danger at any time. His family once found a matching bone marrow for him, but in the end, he didn't have that surgery." Sophia's face turned ashen. Obviously, she also thought of why I didn't have that surgery, because she had given my only chance of survival to her first love. Sophia looked at Olivia at a loss and asked, "Is he in danger? Can we wait? His family is very rich. They must be able to do something." "I don't know." After the matching bone marrow was gone, James chose to leave the hospital. Olivia said, "He is my patient, and I desperately hope he can live well." "But you answered that confirmation call, right? Don't you know better than me how James is now?" Sophia walked out of the office in a daze. David came up to her, but she pushed him away. I watched her stagger to the top floor and dial my brother Mark's phone. This time, the call actually went through. Sophia's voice was trembling, almost pleading, "Is James okay? He's fine, right?" There was no answer on the other end. The next second, the beep 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 busy tone came. The other party hung up the phone. Sophia's expression froze. Her eyes were red, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Mark." Sophia paced back and forth restlessly. She took out her phone and kept making calls. Most of them didn't answer directly. Some people, when they heard her question, also hung up directly. Finally, Sophia flipped through the WeChat chat records with me on her phone. The last conversation was actually a month ago. I asked her if she would come back for dinner, and she didn't reply. After I died, my phone was probably taken away by my family. "James, you're playing hide and seek, right? You have the guts to never reply to me." There was no response for a long time. Sophia's originally beautiful and tidy clothes were now full of wrinkles, and her hair was a mess. She was panting, like a trapped animal. Looking at Sophia in such a mess, my originally resentful and unwilling heart gradually became calm. This kind of woman wasn't worth my hatred. I was forced to follow Sophia and watched her curl up in a corner of the hospital and sleep for a night. The next day, she actually went straight to my brother's company. "I want to see Mark." Sophia stood at the front desk and shouted. The receptionist girl looked up at the messy Sophia and said, "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" Sophia pointed at herself in disbelief and asked, "Appointment? Are you asking me? Don't you know me? I'm Sophia." The receptionist girl replied indifferently, "Miss, strangers need to make an appointment to see Mark." Sophia was stunned. In the past, when she came to my brother's company, she could go up any time. No matter how busy my brother was, he would invite her up to sit and rest first. How could she be turned away like this? Sophia sneered, "I'm here to talk to Mark about his brother's matter." "Are you sure you want to stop me?" The receptionist's face turned cold. "Please make an appointment first." "Fine. If you don't let me see him, I'll just sit here and not leave." With that, Sophia plopped down on the reception sofa in the lobby. I stared at her from afar and suddenly found it very ridiculous. Sophia once said that I was sometimes very impolite and rough, always making trouble out of nothing. But wasn't she more like a shrew making trouble out of nothing now? The receptionist clearly had no intention of indulging her. She turned her head and murmured a few words into the walkie-talkie. In less than half a minute, a group of strong security guards appeared and roughly pulled Sophia up. Sophia roared angrily, "What are you doing? I'm James' girlfriend." Sophia started to struggle violently, but as a weak woman, how could she match these burly men? I watched as she was dragged out like a dead dog, and one of her high heels fell off during the struggle. Sophia kept shouting that she was my girlfriend, the sister-in-law of the future CEO of Thunder Company, and asking how these people dared to treat her like this. But everyone just looked at her indifferently. Sophia finally realized something was wrong. She lay on the ground and looked up at the receptionist, who was looking down at her, and asked, "Did James really abandon me? How ridiculous." I didn't know if she was pretending to be stupid or really stupid. She still didn't believe that something had happened to me at this point. The receptionist girl, with a look of disgust on her face, was about to speak when she saw Sophia's eyes staring straight behind her. I followed her gaze and was shocked. It was my brother, Mark, whom I hadn't even seen for the last time. He was wearing a sharp black suit, his face looked a bit haggard, and at this moment, he was coldly watching the farce in the lobby. I couldn't help but take a step forward and said, "Brother." I felt wronged and sad, but as a ghost, I couldn't even shed tears. Sophia struggled to run in front of my brother and eagerly asked, "Is James okay? I heard his illness is very dangerous." Mark said, "You knew his illness was dangerous, yet you gave the quota to someone else behind our backs." Sophia froze and said, "Wronged? I didn't know at the time. James seemed fine. So I gave it to David first." "Where did James seem fine?" Mark said with hatred in his eyes. "James would lose a lot of hair during each chemotherapy, and at night, when the illness flared up, the bone pain kept him awake all night. You, on the other hand, were out socializing until midnight and then made him, in that condition, take care of you." "Is Sophia even human?" Sophia replied in a low voice, "But James never told me these things." Mark looked at Sophia, getting angrier. "Did you give James a chance to tell you?" "Sophia, ever since David contacted you, your whole heart has been on him. For that man, you even risked the company's cash flow break to send him to the best hospital and even snatched away my brother's only chance of survival." Sophia immediately retorted, "No, I like James. I saved David only because I couldn't bear to see him suffer. He's also alive. How could I just stand by?" Mark sneered and said, "Did David ever tell you that he has 3 houses in New York and millions of dollars in savings?" Sophia's voice stopped abruptly. She looked at Mark in disbelief. Mark looked at her with disgust and said, "I'm really looking forward to seeing how far that guy will go for you. You want to see my brother? Let's go." With that, Mark walked out the door first. Sophia hesitated for a second and then immediately followed. I didn't know how long I could still exist in this world. Seeing Mark at this moment, I felt mixed emotions. I followed him closely, just wanting to spend more time with him. Along the way, my eyes were always on my brother. He stared expressionlessly out of the car window. I couldn't read the emotions in his eyes clearly. He looked very haggard. I felt a bit guilty. I chose to end my life to get rid of the pain, but it put all the pressure on Mark. He suddenly lost his brother and still had to take care of our elderly parents. I gently placed my hand on his, remembering when we were kids. Our parents were very busy, and it was my brother who took care of me. Although he was reluctant in words, every time I played tricks and refused to walk, he would silently carry me on his back. Later, when I said I liked Sophia, even though he didn't think highly of her, he still helped her. Without him, Sophia's company would probably have gone bankrupt long ago. I bitterly cursed Sophia in my heart. She was really heartless and ungrateful. I was really blind back then. The car stopped steadily. Sophia was stunned. When she opened the car door and got out, she stumbled and almost fell. Only then did I realize that Mark had taken Sophia to the cemetery. Sophia's legs went weak. Mark casually pointed at 2 bodyguards and said, "You two, carry her. Since she wants to come, let her kowtow properly to my brother." The evergreen trees in the cemetery stood upright. Mark walked forward step by step and finally stopped in front of a new grave. The stone slab of the grave clearly looked newly sealed. There was no tombstone, and it was filled with flowers. He turned his head against the light and looked at Sophia. "Didn't you want to see James?" The color drained from Sophia's face. She walked forward with heavy steps, but tripped over her own feet and fell to her knees in a sorry state. The flowers in front of the grave were knocked over by her. She somewhat nervously tried to hold the flowers up and then slowly looked up at Mark. I noticed that her eyes were bloodshot. Sophia shouted angrily, "You're lying to me, right? How could James die? It's only been a week, just a week. James was killed by you," Mark said coldly. Sophia trembled all over and stared at Mark in disbelief. "Sophia, you're talking nonsense. How could I harm him?" Mark raised his hand and made a vague gesture in the air, then asked softly, "Why not? This disease is very painful when it attacks. I saw the home surveillance. James was writhing in pain on the floor, but he couldn't even cry out because there was no one at home. He wanted to get his phone, but his hands were shaking so much from the pain that he couldn't even dial the phone. Did you ever see James suddenly have a nosebleed?" Sophia froze. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say a word. Mark wasn't going to let her off. He continued, "The blood fell on the ground, and James was alone, kneeling on the ground, slowly wiping the blood clean. I felt a bit embarrassed. If I had a physical body, I probably could have dug out a 3-bedroom apartment on the ground. Although my illness was critical, because I ended my life early, I didn't really suffer as much as Mark said. Mark deliberately exaggerated my suffering, probably just to torture Sophia." My eyes fell on Sophia. His goal was indeed achieved. Sophia sat on the ground in a daze, big tears rolling down. She cried and trembled all over, starting from a soft sob and finally turning into a loud wail, repeating over and over, "I'm sorry, I didn't know, I really didn't know." Her voice became hoarse, and in the end, she started to kowtow to my grave continuously, with increasing force. I couldn't help but frown. Her pain gave me a bit of pleasure, but if possible, I didn't want this woman to dirty my path to reincarnation. Obviously, Mark had the same idea. He waved his hand, and the bodyguards lifted Sophia up. Mark said, "My brother called me before he died." Sophia's eyes slowly fell on Mark. Mark raised his chin slightly and said word by word, he said he hoped Sophia would never bother him again, and he hoped to have no more contact with you. Sophia trembled all over. Her eyes stared blankly at the cemetery. After a while, she slowly got up and said, "Yes, it would have been better if he had never met me." With that, she turned around and slowly left the cemetery. I looked at her back in confusion. Sophia's state seemed very strange, as if she had lost her soul. I reluctantly looked back at my brother, who was still standing by the cemetery, and then regretfully followed Sophia. She actually went back to the hospital where David was. I felt a bit annoyed. I didn't know when I could get rid of this stupid woman. I thought that this time when Sophia returned to the hospital, she would be affectionate with David again, but unexpectedly, she entered the room with a cold face. When David first saw Sophia in a mess, he was startled. Then he gradually calmed down and said softly, "Oh, Sophia, what happened to you? How did you get like this? Did you quarrel with James?" Even after I died, I still had to be dragged out and taunted by David. What a despicable man and a shameless woman. In the past, if David coaxed Sophia like this, he could definitely make her smile happily. But this time, Sophia grabbed his hand and stared at him intently. Sophia pleaded, "David, I have something to ask you." David was taken aback and immediately said, "What do you mean by asking? You've helped me so much. If you encounter any difficulties, I'll definitely help you." Sophia continued, "There's a problem with my company. Can you lend me some money?" David asked, "How much do you need?" Sophia said, $5 million. $5 million? David exclaimed. "Where would I get that much money?" Then he realized he had overreacted and quickly added, "Sorry, Sophia. I almost spent all my savings on my illness. I only have 5,000 yuan left. I'll give it all to you. He held Sophia's hands with both of his. When I get better and earn money, I'll give you more. Sophia stared at him and said, really? With those properties and savings you have in New York, you can't even scrape together 5 million? David looked at Sophia in surprise. Then his eyes rolled, and he continued, Sophia, did someone tell you something? I don't have any properties in New York. They all belong to my friends. They're just in my name. I can't touch my friends' things. As soon as David said this, not only did Sophia not believe it, but even I thought it was ridiculous. Who would be crazy enough to put their house in his name? This scoundrel. Look, this is the man you gave your all to. Watching her being played around, I couldn't help but laugh. Sophia smiled bitterly and said, do you know? When I first started my business, James gave me 5 million as startup capital. His family was very strict with him, and this money was all he saved secretly. At that time, no one was optimistic about my company in the emerging industry. Only James gave me the money without hesitation, not afraid that I would lose it all. I was so stupid back then. I even had a feud with him, thinking that he was suppressing me with money. I told him that having a few bucks wasn't a big deal, and that I would be much richer than him in the future. But now I realize that some things can't be bought with money. I risked the company's cash flow break to pay for your treatment, but what about you? After hearing her words, David's expression also became a bit awkward. He stiffened his neck and said, did I ask you to give me the money? Are you crazy? You really think you've done a lot and are self-indulging in your so-called sacrifice? Everything was your own choice, including the bone marrow donor. You gave it to me voluntarily. What, did James quarrel with you because of this, and now you're taking it out on me? I'm telling you, Sophia, there are plenty of people willing to do things for me. If you don't want to stay, get out. When David mentioned the snatched bone marrow donor, Sophia's face turned deathly pale. She stared at David with dark eyes, and there was a hint of madness on her face. Sophia murmured, yes, it was you who snatched his chance to live. If it weren't for you, he might have already had the surgery and entered the recovery period. At that time, I would definitely have accompanied him and taken care of him every day. If it weren't for you. Sophia's voice suddenly rose. The next second, she rushed over, grabbed David's neck tightly, and pushed him onto the bed. David struggled violently. Since he had just recovered from a serious illness, he couldn't resist Sophia. His fingernails scratched Sophia, but Sophia didn't loosen her grip at all. The hospital bed shook violently, and the bottles and jars on the nearby table were knocked to the ground. The sound of broken glass quickly attracted the nurse. The nurse let out a scream and rushed in to try to pull Sophia away. Then security guards and doctors also came in to help separate them. Cough, cough, cough. Sophia, you crazy woman. She's crazy. She wants to kill me. Catch her quickly. David shouted loudly. Sophia struggled wildly and roared, let me go. It's all his fault. He killed my boyfriend. Bullshit. It was you who killed him. Sophia, it was you who killed the person who loved you the most. Sophia's expression suddenly turned ashen. She froze in place and let the security guards press her to the ground. I stood at the door, watching all this coldly. I thought to myself, yes, it was this selfish and stupid woman who harmed me. These two despicable people actually turned on each other so quickly. I found it extremely ridiculous. Just then, with a thud, Sophia was pushed by David. Her head hit the ground heavily, and she passed out. The next second, a flash of white light, and I also lost consciousness. Before losing consciousness, I couldn't help but feel a bit regretful. This time, it seemed like I was really going to be freed, but I hadn't even had a chance to see all my relatives. When I woke up again, I saw the same white ceiling. I actually woke up in the hospital again. Fortunately, I already had the experience of being a ghost, so this time I wasn't panicked at all. Click, the door was pushed open, and it was Mark who came in. His eyes swept over my face and then landed on a small table not far away. He walked over and put something on the table. I was stunned. But the next second, my mood became heavy again. He was in the hospital. I didn't know who it was for. Was it for my parents, or was there something wrong with his own body? I looked at him worriedly. He scooped out half a bowl of porridge from the thermos and walked towards me, awake? I pointed at myself in disbelief and asked in surprise, you can see me? My brother rolled his eyes and said, did you damage your brain during the surgery? I said, but didn't I die? Mark's face fell, who said you died? I said in disbelief, I clearly, and then I went to your house. There was a whole process of gastric lavage and emetic. Mark said calmly, but because your body was too weak before, you somehow fell into a coma. Later, we found a matching bone marrow for you and directly performed the surgery. I asked doubtfully, so now my illness? Yeah, it's already cured. There's no rejection reaction for now. My brother said with a cold smile, you're in good health now. When you get out of the hospital, my parents and I will give you a good beating. Hearing this, I shrank my neck in fear. Then I remembered that miraculous experience of being out of body and following Sophia. I tentatively asked, when I was unconscious, I had a strange dream. I dreamed that I was out of body and following Sophia. Mark pursed his lips, looking disappointed. You're really something. Seeing that he misunderstood, I quickly explained, it's not what you think. I followed her and saw her being severely tortured. It was so satisfying. I also saw you take her to a grave without a tombstone and tell her I was dead. Mark was stunned and said in surprise, I did do that. I was shocked. You really bought a grave for me? Aren't you cursing me to death? Mark said, didn't you originally not want to live? You were half dead in the ICU at that time. Why couldn't I buy a grave for you in advance? I was stunned and immediately realized something was wrong. I quickly asked, how long did I lie there? 3 months. My God, I was in a coma for 3 whole months. I immediately felt guilty again. They had been worried about me for these 3 months. I knew I must have been in great danger at that time, otherwise they wouldn't have bought a grave for me in advance. My heart felt a bit sour. This was my loving family. I knelt on one knee and reached out to hug my brother's neck. Brother, thank you. I'll definitely listen to you from now on. Mark was silent for a long time. Finally, he raised his hand and hugged me, as long as you know. I thought for a while and then asked, by the way, what about that grave then? Mark replied, I sold it for $5 million. I said in surprise, no way. There can't really be a fool who would spend $5 million on a broken grave, right? From that day on, I started my rehabilitation life. Because I had been lying in bed for too long, my limbs were a bit weak. My brother hired a professional to help me with rehabilitation, and it turned out to be the female Dr. Olivia, who had stood up for me and criticized Sophia in the hospital before. Olivia was a very humorous and witty person. Every time she examined me, she would find some topics to amuse me. And at work, she was very careful. With her help, I recovered quickly and could soon walk outside the ward with someone's company. One day, as I was walking slowly with Olivia in the garden, we heard crying and commotion ahead. Olivia supported me and we stood aside from a distance to watch. I looked closely and found that it was David. For some unknown reason, he was sitting on the ground, wailing. All of his former handsomeness had vanished. He clung tightly to the nurse's clothes, his expression wild, looking like a madman. David kept shouting, why is there a rejection reaction? Why? Is your medical skill not up to par? Otherwise, why am I having a rejection reaction? I don't want to die. Where is that volunteer? Ask him to donate bone marrow to me again. I have money, a lot of money. Save me. Save me. Sir, please calm down. We've already contacted that volunteer. Donations are all voluntary. If he doesn't want to, we can't force him. I stared in David's direction, unable to snap out of it for a long time. He actually had a rejection reaction. Noticing that I kept looking over there, Olivia asked me in a low voice, are you tired? Let's go back. I nodded and, leaning on her, turned around. The next second, I was stunned in my tracks. Standing right behind me was Sophia. She was staring intently at me. I groaned inwardly, hoping this annoying person wouldn't bother me. Olivia clearly saw her too. She frowned slightly, then helped me walk away slowly. As we passed by Sophia, I heard her say in a low voice, James, I'm sorry. I was really happy when I found out you were still alive. I bought that grave from your brother. If I die, I want to be buried in it. If there's a next life. Sophia, please believe that this is a materialistic society, Olivia beside me suddenly said. If you count on the next life for everything, doesn't that mean you've been a failure in this life? Be more realistic. If you can't even live this life well, why do you think you'll be able to be a human in the next life? Sophia's voice stopped abruptly. Olivia really had a sharp tongue. I almost wanted to applaud her. She saw me looking at her, gave me a gentle smile, and led me away slowly.